So hello and welcome to an episode of Things 4 Wheels. Now today I'm doing something completely different, and that's because basically I went to the NEC restoration show last weekend and I actually managed to buy some original 1990s Mercedes brochures. Now this particular one, if we look at the back, tells us that it's from October 1998. That's what all the prices are effective from. And one of the things I thought would be really interesting is that I find this type of thing really interesting, from finding old brochures that are actually original from the time of manufacture of these cars and sort of around the time of my own SLK. And one of the things I found really interesting, just looking for the range, and that fascinates me. I don't know why it fascinates me. So I thought it might be a nice idea to make a bit of a video just out of this book. I bought a few others, but I thought this one was a good starting place because it's sort of an overview of the actual range that Mercedes did in the late 90s and in 1998. So we start off with this cover. It doesn't really say anything, but if I turn over, actually it does make a very good point. So it says, I don't want a car, I want a Mercedes. And I love that image of just, you could have any car or you could have a Mercedes. And obviously you've got what looks like an EClass or a CLK with that 3-pointed star sticker on the bonnet. And then over on this side we just have a little bit of a blurb. Sooner or later, for a certain kind of driver, the love of Mercedes becomes too much. The dream of ownership is no longer enough. It's time to make the dream a reality. In part it's to do with the pleasure of slipping into such a distinctive, superbly finished interior. It's part to do with the thrill of handling one of the best engineered cars in the world. In part it's to do with the assurance of knowing you're behind the wheel of one of the safest cars in the world. And beyond all this, it's to do with a certain extra something that you can't easily put into words. A sense of breeding, if you will. An unmistakable refinement, a feeling of quality and effortless elegance that is ready to be found in other cars. So why resist any longer if our 3-pointed star and what it stands for strikes as an instinctive chord for you? You're ready for a new driving experience. You're ready for a Mercedes-Benz. So if we move over onto the next page, we have a very nice interior. It looks like from a sort of either E-Class or a CLK. Very manual gearbox as well. I didn't think they did manual gearbox in the late 90s, but so they did in certain models. And if we move over here, it's a little bit more blurb. It says, today the 3-pointed star stands for many things. It stands for safety, it stands for luxury, it stands for breathtaking horsepower, it stands for pioneering research. It stands above all for nothing less than motoring excellence. Very simply, our goal is to build cars of the highest engineering quality. It is the one guiding principle that shapes all we do. It's the reason our engineers use nothing but top-grade steels and alloys rather than cheaper but inferior materials, and why they insist on welding where other manufacturers would glue. It's the reason our designers specify only the finest interior leathers and woods. It's the reason we carry our extensive range of separate quality control checks in every single one of our cars before it is allowed to leave the factory. And it is also why we happily spend upwards of £350 million on research and development every year. As you can see, a nice shot there. Well, look like an E-Class being bought in the factory. Now, I have to admit, I do sort of get this really, because I always remember my dad had a company car, Mondeo, in the 90s, and he basically said the bottom of it was made out of cardboard, and basically what it was doing, the bottom under tray was basically peeling away when it got wet, and it was basically allowing all the water into areas which it shouldn't really get into, i.e. electrics. And eventually gave his Mondeo back, and while he was in the process of giving it back, he actually went to a Mercedes dealer and he said, well, I've just had this Mondeo, I really didn't like it, why should I buy a Mercedes and get a Mercedes? Obviously it's going to cost him a bit more money. And this was just at the time, sort of mid-90s, when the W202 C-Class, which we'll probably see in this book a bit later on, was actually launched. And the salesman turned around to him and said, well, Ford's are bought to a price and Mercedes are bought to a standard, you know, and I think that is really the difference, and you sort of, so that's what they're sort of getting at here. And I do think the quality of my 1999 SLK is absolutely top notch, and even compared to slightly newer cars, I think they're not quite as good. I remember the dent we get, Pear Guy came out to do a dent in the SLK, my older SLK, and he actually said about how thicker and the quality of the metal was compared to the new ones. Now, I think definitely during the 90s it was a time where Mercedes over-engineered their cars. Maybe that had its benefits, i.e. build quality and just the overall quality of the cars. But in terms of the bottom line, I don't think it's really the best thing for Mercedes. So I think they've probably found a happy compromise on some of their modern cars. So obviously it makes sense for us to start going for the range now, and we're starting at the smallest car they do, which I think was quite relatively new. I don't know when it was launched, the AClass, probably not 97, 98, I would imagine, off the top of my head. And as you can see, we've got a lovely image of the AClass there, and we've got some more images here, and also obviously you start to see a little bit of the crash safety side coming in as well. Some useful little dimensions, a little bit of a blurb here, and the interesting fact I was reading this earlier on, interesting fact about the AClass here, we'll find out. The AClass is ideal for drivers who require established Mercedes levels of comfort, safety, yet in a more convenient package. Thanks to a new radical sandwich floor design, the AClass offers the same interior space as a Mercedes C-Class, despite its much shorter length, and I never knew that. That's quite an interesting fact. The result is a genuine all-rounder, a car perfect for motorways and long journeys, but equally at home in crowded towns and cities. And maybe that's why they put in the little crash test there, because people were worried about the sort of smaller design, whether it's still going to be a typical Mercedes quality. And as you can see, 1998 prices here. So on the road price from 14,490, which is obviously A140. You also got the A160. It was an A170 CDI as well. This car I think was launched with a diesel engine as well. I know no note of the some of the more rarer cars that they did, which was the 190, and also did a A210 as well. I think those came a little bit later. So very interesting start to the range. And obviously skip a B-Class because obviously I didn't make that in the 90s, and I've got quite a soft spot for these. My dad's first company car, he had two of these. He had a 250 turbo diesel because he used to do a lot of miles, and then he moved on, had a 220 CDI when that was launched as well. And I do have a soft spot. There's I think the picture my parents have of me actually standing in the boot of this car. I don't know what I was doing standing in the boot, but I was about 5 at the time, so didn't really matter. So the Mercedes C-Class, beautiful to look at and a delight to drive. The Mercedes C-Class is considered by many to be in a league of its own. Stylish, comfortable and supremely safe, this is a car designed to exceed your expectations on every occasion, whether it's negotiating city traffic or cruising on the open highway. And of course, being a Mercedes, C-Class offers one other important advantage too. Thanks to its superior build quality, it is guaranteed to go on holding its appeal and its value for years longer than lesser cars. Slightly rubbing salt in the wound there for them on there, I think. Actually got some more little shots of it here. Useful little sizes again. Obviously you had the C-Class Estate and obviously you had the Saloon as well. And obviously a bit of a range of engines. I think they did the same engines in the Saloon and the Estate, so we'll just have a look at one of those. You can see a C180, C200, C230 compressor, which is quite a sporty one. You move on to your V6s then, which was the 240, the 280, and you've even got a very early AMG here, C43 AMG, and then as I already mentioned, the C250 Turbo is one my dad had made because he did a lot of mileage. So really interesting car and quite fond memories. I would really love to buy a W202 C-Class. Now obviously this was the first generation C-Class, but Mercedes already done a little bit of what they called a baby Benz, which was the 190, which was the W201. Didn't actually call it the C-Class until they came out with the 202. Now as you can see, we move on to a little bit bigger, a little more executive, the E-Class of the late 90s. There's a few more images here, again showing the Estate off as well, because I did a Saloon and Estate version of the E-Class. Not sure who that chap is on the white, he's just some random bloke. How better to relax and unwind after a long hard day of business, or maybe he's a businessman, he's done a long hard day of business and he wants to have a soothing drive home maybe. So how better to relax and unwind after a long hard day of business then with a soothing homeward journey in the world's finest executive car. Or what more delightful way to take a trip to the country, the continent, or a restaurant or theatre. Quite a varied use of their cars, really. To settle into the spacious, gracious E-Class interior, that's a mouthful, is to enter a different world. A world of calm and order, filled with the mellow glints of wood and chrome and leather, and offering yet more delights as you turn the ignition can experience the vehicle's effortless handling and power. This is a world far removed from the hustle and bustle of the office, a world in which all journeys from the shortest to the longest become a pleasure, not a chore. Quite an interesting one. That was clearly aiming at sort of business people. Yeah, interesting car. Again, I do have a little bit of soft spot for these, but not quite as much. I remember my neighbour had one of these when I was growing up. I think it was C240, the E240, sorry, he had when I was growing up. So, yeah, nice car. I do like these again. Now, moving on to the S-Class, and one of the interesting things, as we go back to the E-Class, is just how different this W210 or S210 actually looked compared to the rest of the cars. So, obviously go from the C-Class, which again, Mercedes were doing their sort of very chunky styling, boxy styling in the 90s, which was sort of very much in favour. And actually it was quite rounded, particularly the front and the rear lights again were quite sort of rounded design. It's sort of one of the looked a bit different in the range. If we move on to the S-Class, again you see that sort of chunky design. So, the Mercedes S-Class. There is only one way to understand why the S-Class is constantly rated the best car in the world, and that is to drive it. I have to admit, I always say, one thing I always say, is nothing quite drives like an S-Class. That's something I've been sort of quoted a few times to say. And they do just drive like nothing else. I don't know what it is about that. I just know a lot of different cars in my job of working at a car dealership. But every time I get into an S-Class, it's just something completely different. Words alone cannot do justice to the experience of travelling in the ultimate motoring expression of style, comfort and safety. Meanwhile, drivers who wish to combine all of this exhilarating driving performance will find their requirements met in full by the magnificent CL Coupe. Now, the S-Class was originally an S-Class saloon, and obviously the limousine long wheelbase version. They used to have the S-Class Coupe, but they did change it to the CL sort of some point in the mid-90s. The S-Class simply is a car created for the world's most discerning owners who frequently lead unusually demanding lives, and who return entitled to demand nothing but the best from their car in which they drive. So, blimey, a little bit different that from one end of the extreme to the other, really. As you can see, we've got all the different models here. So we have S280 in the saloon, S320, and S420 and S500 in the limousine, which is basically a long wheelbase version, I assume. We have an S320, an S420, S500, and also an S600, so not illustrated. And for the coupe, selection of 3 engines here. They got the 420, the 500, and the 600 as well. And that's quite a big price for particularly the S600. I think it was the 6-litre V12. That's quite a big price even today, let alone back in 1998. As you can see, got more of the dimensions as well, and a few pictures there. And as you can see, got the very distinctive V12. Just in case you couldn't sort of hear it under the bonnet, you've got it on the gear lever there as well. You've just got a picture of the CL Coupe there. So moving on. And as you can see, we move into the SL. So from the flowing lines to the impeccable handling, from the sports seats and the hand-stitched leather steering wheel to the lightning-quick response of the engine, every last detail of the Mercedes SL communicates its distinguished thoroughbred pedigree. To step inside the SL is to step inside a legend, and to drive a legend is to experience a rare degree of motoring pleasure. We even have quite the rare option here. That's the hard top with the glass roof, which I think was an option. I don't think every SL came with that, to be honest. But yeah, just a lovely looking car. Again, I have another soft spot for all these sort of 90s car tickets SL. I think there's definitely something coming of age at the moment. Gets that a little bit older. As you can see, 4 engines. We've got a 280, a 320, a 500 and a 600. Again, the 600 is really expensive even now, let alone back in the 90s. Now moving on, off we've come to slightly more sort of sporty range. We've got the CLK. So the flowing lines of the CLK make it undoubtedly one of the most beautiful cars on the road. Meanwhile, the sure-footed chassis and the superb engineering ensure it is one of the most responsive cars too, and it's also practical with enough room to carry 4 adults and their luggage in comfort. As you can tell, obviously the CLK came in coupe and cabriolet as well, and as you can see there's a different range of engines: 200, 230 compressor and also 230 non-compressor, and in the cabriolet, as you can see, CLK compressor, 230 compressor and also a 320 as well. Interesting that the 320 is only available in the convertible, and there's some more sizes there for you. And onto more familiar territory here. I absolutely love this colour. I don't know what colour that one is. It looks like a sort of metallic red, but it could just be the normal bright red, just in a slightly different sort of lighting than I've edited the photos. So, Mercedes SLK, launched in 1996, the SLK is already a new Mercedes legend in the making. Compact, agile and superbly proportioned, the SLK is a roadster that truly anticipates the 21st century. At the same time, the overall styling and classic interior trim evoke strong memories of the illustrious Mercedes racing tradition. A striking feature is the all-steel Vario roof that folds away in a touch of a button. We've got some more little close-ups here and up here. A little bit of dimensions there for you, and obviously the SLK, as we all know, the pre-facelift cars of 2000 were only available with one engine, and that is the 230 compressor. So moving on for the range now, from probably one of the smallest cars to one of the biggest cars that they made was the MClass. So genuine 4x4 qualities combined with traditional Mercedes levels of engineering and comfort to make the MClass the perfect vehicle drives to travel in style on or off the road. The all-independent suspension will handle even the toughest terrain with smooth V6 and V8's power delivery and seamless gear shifts from the adaptive automatic transmission are all you'd expect from a Mercedes saloon. So again, very much new territory for Mercedes this was. I think they wanted to show it again like the A-Class. This was still sort of every inch of Mercedes-Benz. As you can see, got some more pictures down here. A little bit of dimensions there, and just the 2 engines for the M-Class in 1998, the 320 and the 430 V8. And moving on, we've also got this little bit here, which is the information request, which you fill out and then tear off and obviously send off to Mercedes. So again, very new territory for Mercedes is the V-Class, which again I think was launched sort of in the late 90s and played where it's expanding out in different models and different markets. So for families or executives on the move, the V-Class is one of the most spacious and safest vehicles of its type available today. Among its many noteworthy features are the rear seats that for maximum flexibility can be turned to face each other across a fold-away table. So, and there we are, there is said seats and there is said fold-away table. Very interesting, yeah, interesting time. That's a car very much I never really look at. I don't think they sold that many, because you don't see that many around. So as you can see, dimensions there. And a choice of 2 V6 petrol engines, as you can see, the 230 and the 280. So that is the Mercedes range. Just a little bit of blurb just telling you about all the prices and stuff. And yeah, what a fantastic little bit of Mercedes history, really. It's very much of its time, with all the images and obviously the cars that were in the range at the time. And I just thought that'd be really sort of an interesting little sort of starting place, really. Hopefully you like this video. It's something new, something different. If you do like it, make sure you drop a like below. Yeah, any comments on if you had one of these cars maybe back in the day, or if you've got one of those cars now, in fact, please do put in the comments below. And as ever, if you like what you've seen, make sure you want to see more of this, make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. So it's goodbye from me, goodbye from the brochure, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.